Here it is, Q's and A's for April 2023. Whoa, did you guys come in hot this month? I am super excited about the questions, some really good ones. I'm going to do my best to answer all of them in a way that feels satisfying and complete while not turning this into another 2-hour Q&A session. So here we go. Let's get to it. Pip. I'm working off notes because I want to make sure I do justice to everybody's question. Pip was asking about the magical / medicinal influences of the season. So how does the magic and the medicine of an individual plant change and adjust based on the season? And if we harvest a plant at a certain time of year, does that change the kind of energetic or temperament or expression that that plant might have? This is a really cool question, and very complex in certain ways, but also really simple. So Pip had started the discussion with the idea that right now, as we kind of come up towards May Day and it's, the height of spring and all of the sap is rising and the plants are emerging from the darkness of the soil and coming into our side of the world after their long winter of rest, there is definitely this feeling of quickening, right? The energy feels like it's lifting up and there's a buzz and everything is waking up and all the animals are busy, and that definitely, I think, influences the plants. I think one of the reasons why so many of our folkloric plant rituals are around this time of year, so many of the Morris dances, Jack in the Green, Burning Man's a little later, but is that we're celebrating this thing that we can all feel, that we perceive, and we understand that the plants are coming into our world with a force, right? There's a power. As we move into summer, there's a little more of a strong stability, right? It's a kingship, it's a sovereignty energy. The plants are here, they're full of foliage, they are properly pollinated, they're kind of hanging out in that peak space before they move into fruiting and creating produce, as we would say. And then that season of produce, of production, and how it relates to the cornucopia, to the larder, to abundance and prosperity and enoughness, and always, being properly nourished and fed. And then, of course, as we move into winter, which is a time of rest. So I think that if you are trying to work the magic and medicine of a specific season, it makes sense to work with the plants that are doing well at that time. So I wanted to do kind of a springtime magical perfume this year. And the first plant that came to mind was to work with Forsythia, because this is a shrub here where I live that's pretty much the first flowering plant that we see. And so not only was I trying to connect with the spirit of this incredible plant, this harbinger of the springtime, but also to acknowledge that Forsythia is really embodying all of the buzz, all of the energy, all of the increased sunshine and lengthening days that spring represents. And I thought that putting that in a bottle would be nice, middle of winter, have a little something to turn to connect with some springtime energy when you need it most. So short answer is yes. When you harvest a plant, definitely, you will be getting the magic and the medicine of where that plant is. And since plants are so related to season, they're doing what they do because of what season it is, you'll be locking in or kind of harvesting where the plant is engaged with that season at that time. The energy of any plant in the spring versus their energy at the end of autumn, it's a different vibe, and it's even that the life force within the plant will be moving in a different way. At springtime, it moves upwards. Towards the autumn, it starts moving downwards. So we can think about how the plant will move through our body, how the energy will condense, how it will unfold, if it's hotter or colder, if it's drier or more damp. All of this stuff can be influenced. For me, at the end of the day, the essential temperament and virtues of a plant, if the plant is cold and dry, that will always be the primary temperament of a plant, but that can be softened or mitigated, or we can find some nuances through this time of harvesting. I think it's also important to talk about this concept that comes out of traditional Chinese medicine of yi, Y-I, yi, which the best translation that I can come up with here is intention, right? That if there is a plant, so for example, if I use forsythia as an example, if it's the spring energy that I'm trying to connect to and not so much the medicine of forsythia, and by the way, forsythia for me, it's the fruit that I work with most medicinally, which I won't see until September, right? So if my intention is the more springtime opening energy, whether that's forsythia or crocus or birch, right? Some of these plants that are the early ones to wake up, my intent is what acts as a petition or a prayer to that plant spirit to call forth specifically what it is that I'm after. So as we approach forsythia, our yi could be the medicine of the forsythia fruit to get us through cold and flu season, or it could be the medicine and the energy of spring, of rising, of waking up, of new beginnings, of the stirrings of fertility and potential, and that will dramatically change the way that the plant gives, the way that the plant shows up, because now it's a conversation, it's a communication, right? So something else. Another really good question about journeying with plant spirits that are either unsafe to ingest internally, or maybe not suitable for the individual. Maybe the herb is too stimulating for you or too sedating for you, or maybe there's a sensitivity or an allergy, or maybe the constitution, the temperament, the personality of that herb just not such super good fit with you. So for whatever reason, you want to have a connection with the plant, but you're aware that taking that plant internally, even in super small doses, might not be a good choice. There is no reason why you cannot continue on with the relationship. In fact, some of the plants that I have gotten the closest to over the years are ones that I could never take internally. And folks who are working a baneful path, a poison path of plant medicine, rarely ingest the plant spirits that they work with. I think about the incredible work of Catherine Soley, Persephone's Path. She teaches openly not to ingest any of the plants, that the work is about being able to connect to them in the imaginal realm versus having to have a physical connection to them. So she really encourages people to strengthen that muscle of being connected to everything all at once, and to strengthen the cords that connect us to our allies. So totally possible. Pip had kind of mentioned specifically the idea of smoking. That we could maybe smoke some herbs as a way to connect with them rather than ingesting them. In my experience, I get all of the same effect from an herb by smoking them as I do from taking a tincture or a tea. I think smoking is a totally viable form of medicine, and it kicks in really fast and it goes into the bloodstream and it's permeating those, delicate membranes of the lungs. So it's really getting in there. So, if it's an herb you don't feel safe taking internally, I would think also not to smoke. Maybe you could consider building an incense from that plant that you could burn outside, so that you're getting some of the fragrance and the energy of that plant's unfolding, but not in such concentrated ways. The plants that I work with that are not safe for me to take internally, here's what I have done in the past. Maybe there's some inspiration here. I've built little shrines for them, so there's like a physical point of connection. I have made, of course, sachets. You all know I love sachet magic. I've made sachets, carried them with me, slept with them under my pillow, done meditation and journey work with them. I have purchased the flower essence made from that plant. Rather than taking a full therapeutic dose, I'm working with an energetic signature of the plant. You can take properly made flower essences even of poisonous plants, because there's no physical presence of that plant in the essence. It's just the energetic signature. It's just their blueprint, right? And so there are lots of ways, if it's a plant you can grow in your garden, the journey work could be done by going and sitting with them, for a few minutes every day in person. The sky's the limit, and by no means should anybody feel like they have to adjust an herb to take the journey. Some of the herbs that I work with most, the connection is, a little bit of a salve or balm made from them, applied topically as a protection or as a way to work on sealing up cracks, right? And so I'm not ingesting at all. It's a fully topical connection, but not a topical relationship. And of course, my closest allies hang out with me in my pocket all the time. In the morning when I get my keys and my wallet, I'm also picking up the sachets that hold the plant spirits that I'm close with, and they journey with me through my day. And that has a big effect on how things go, right? So hopefully some inspiration there. Next question from Sharon. I thought this was a really beautiful, poignant question, and that is, do pharmaceutical drugs get in the way of our work with plant spirits? So for example, if you're taking, a pharmaceutical drug for cardiovascular health, and maybe you're also working with plant spirits to do deeper, heart space work, or something totally unrelated to the heart, will the pharmaceuticals, numb or dull or alter or in some other way change the way that we can really experience the plant spirits? And I think this is a bit of a double-edged sword. On one side, no, the plant spirits come in with a wisdom that I think they will always get done what they want to get done. They will always find a way, right? This is plants. We see this when they grow up through cracks in the sidewalk. We see this when people neglect their house plants for a month and they're on, they look dead, and somebody comes in and waters them and they come back to life. Plants will always find a way, one way or the other. So there's that part of it, and that's the part I like most. The other part of it is, I think there are some pharmaceutical drugs that maybe don't block the work from happening, but slow it, or numb parts of us that the plants really want us to experience full throttle. They want us to work on. So for example, I've worked with people who have been on heavier like psychiatric medications that help them live a good quality of life and maybe turn down some of the internal neurological processes, or help with pain management, or help with anxiety and panic attacks and that type of stuff. We have to be aware that those drugs are, to a certain degree, slowing the system down. And so the work might go a little slower, but it also might not. That's really the only thing I can think of, that could potentially get in the way of the plants, is that we're taking, pharmaceuticals that delay or slow our ability to respond to the work that's happening. But again, we eventually will. It might take a little longer, but on the spectrum of how we do plant spirit work, some people get downloads like that. Some of us, like myself, it takes us many lunar cycles to figure out anything. So for people that are in that boat, I say stick with it. You are not going to miss out. It is not going to prevent you from having the same experiences that everybody else eventually has. You'll just have them in your own way. And if those medications, I am a fan of herbal medicine. I have, to be open and to give clarity here. I have removed pharmaceutical drugs from my life completely. And this is after, being on pharmaceutical drugs as a kid to treat PTSD and anxiety disorders. But I understand that quality of life is important. So while I always want to introduce people to plant medicine that I think can help them live their best life, if at the moment, or even indefinitely, Pharmaceutical medication is what improves people's quality of life. It gets them out of pain. It helps them live as much of their life as they are able to live. I got no problems with it. And at that point, that's where I say, let's look at herbal medicine that maybe will help treat some of the negative side effects of some of the pharmaceuticals. Maybe it's interrupting your appetite or your metabolism, or how well you sleep, or how well you focus. So we can continue to let people have, if they're having positive pharmaceutical experiences, awesome. We can bring the herbs in then to support those pharmaceuticals and to support the body in getting the most out of that medication as possible. And if the person at some point decides, okay, I'm going to transition from a pharmaceutical regimen into an herbal one, that's great. And if they decide not to, that's great too. I want people to be happy and at peace and in comfort. And, science is not, the science of medicine is wonky. I don't trust the system personally, inherently. But we do have good people in the system, and there are drugs out there that do what they're supposed to do. And, so there's that. So awesome question. One thing I will say as I wrap this up that just popped into my head, the difference to me between pharmaceutical medicine and herbal medicine is this. I don't know that I've ever said this in a class or publicly before, outside of maybe some close apprentices. Pharmaceuticals force the body to create change. Herbal medicine invites path work. Okay, so we could unpack that for an hour, but I'll say this. Pharmaceuticals move into the body and force a change to happen. They're forceful, they're direct, they go in with the information contained and say, you do this way now. Herbal medicine comes into the body. Of course, there is a phytochemical aspect of it, right? But beyond that, they say, here is where the problem is, here's where the work needs to be done. And so they come in and invite us to start doing path work, to start doing journey work, to start peeling the onion, to start digging down through the layers. It's more of an invitation. It's more of a journey and a process than the event of pharmaceuticals. So, to me, in a very simplified way, that's how I look at the difference between the two types of medicine. So there's that. Where are we at on time? Let's do one more for fun. This one comes from Donald. Super cool question. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you a whole answer here because it's massive, but I am going to give you a teaser on some things to come. What are some good herbs to be working with this time of year? Where I am, tomorrow is May Day, May 1st, Beltane to some folks. What are the plants that we should be hanging out with right now? I say this, work with the plants that are doing May Day stuff, right? The world around you is celebrating the season. Always remember that the plants, the reason why we have these sacred festivals, these sacred dates, whatever culture you come from, whatever tradition you practice, the dates are sacred, not because we've decided they are, but these ancient animistic, earth-rooted sacred festivals are sacred because the entirety of the world is participating in them. It's not a human thing. It's not your birthday. It's not President's Day. It's not Labor Day, right? No, those are holidays. We are talking about festivals, right? We're talking about the human person showing up to a party that everyone else is at, right? That's the magic. So for me, when we move, whether you're following the neo-pagan, kind of the eightfold wheel of the year, the neo-druidic eightfold wheel, if you're doing more of a deep Celtic, fire festivals only, if you're doing kind of my style, which is a little more agrarian and it's kind of like Beltane and Samhain, are we coming into the bright half? Are we going into the dark half? I always try to honor and acknowledge the date because that's how we have agreed to show up at the same place at the same time, but to walk outside and say, how are the good folk who share space with me, the animals, insects, plants, grasses, the sky, the weather, the sun, the moon, the stars, how is everyone around me honoring this shift, honoring this date? And for me, Beltane and Samhain, May Day and November Eve, the two biggest. the funnest festivals, right? They're the gateway festivals. So for me, I go out and I see the plant spirits opening that gate, coming back into our world, crossing the hedge, reinvesting themselves in our side of the mysteries. They're showing up, they're blossoming, the new leaves are coming out, the world is turning from brown and gray into green. We get some flowers, we get some beautiful springtime fragrance, we get rain. All of these things tell me, as I read the book of nature, what is happening and who I should be working with. So earlier I mentioned forsythia and crocus and birch. These are the plants where I live that are the harbingers of spring. They're the ones that tell me that this event is happening, that the gates have been opened, and the allies of my work, of the plant spirit sorcery I do, are coming back to my side of the hedge. And, you know, conversely, at November Eve, the gates open and we see them return back into their world of mystery, into the roots, into the darkness, and to go do whatever they do for that half of the year. So hang out with who's showing up, you know, see who's got the flashiest colors, the biggest energy, and honor those plants. And the second half of this question, which is the loaded half that I can't get fully into, because once this can gets opened, there's no stopping it, is how can we connect with / honor the green man, the forest god, the king of the woods, the evergreen god at this time of year? I know this question isn't for everybody, but this is my patron and somebody I work very closely with, and I post about him a lot. So I would say that one of the coolest things we could do at this time of year is research and look into some of the May Day festivals throughout Europe, some of the Jack in the Green festivals, the Morris dances, the ways that people have celebrated him and celebrated the return of not only the Green Man, but the May Queen, who is really a face of who? The land goddess, the Mother Earth, right? So they come in pairs. They come with the protector of the land and the land herself. This is the cult of green sorcery. The way that I teach it is the land goddess, the forest god, and of course the plant spirits that we work with. And there we have our trifecta of magical power. So many beautiful rituals that can be found in these May Day festivals, these Beltane, games. The one that is sort of pop right now is, of course, the maypole. Lots of feelings about this. I've researched this for 25 years, and the common belief about the maypole is that it is a phallic symbol, and that we are trying to bind the regenerative, creative potency of the green man so that the land will be fruitful, so that we will have food. And that may be so. When I see Beltane, May Day, maypole festivals, I see a tree being brought out from the wild into the cultivated space, bringing a little bit of that deep fertility into our gardens, into our land, and us dancing around it and adding our magic to the magic of the old gods. So I think however it hits for you, it hits, but my personal way of connecting to him at this time of year is with a lot of looking at the world around me, see how he's showing up, see how that virility is ushering into our world, exploring that in my own life, doing that kind of shadow work, the canopy work, right? How is this new beginning, this ushering in of vital force in my life? What does it look like in my internal garden, right? The soul garden. And do different things every year. We've done maypoles in the past. This year, hopefully I'll get the ability to do either a video or some social media images. This year we are doing kind of a wicker man type build around one of my green man statues and loading that with foliage and flowers, and doing that as kind of a celebration, kind of leaning into those Jack in the Green rituals. So fantastic questions, everybody. Thank you so much. Every single month on Patreon on the 20th, I put out a question call. You can ask whatever you like. Some of the questions I respond privately, but a lot of them make it to this video, which launches on the last day of every month. and we get to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. And sometimes your questions end up leading me to do a whole class on the topic, which the Green Man, as Donald brought up, is going to be one of those. I shouldn't say class, it's a little bit more of a course, because he is showing up in our world in interesting ways right now. So I think it's a good time to talk about him. So you can come join us over on the Patreon if you want to get in on that. Thank you so much to everybody who submitted questions. I really appreciate this. I look forward to this all month. And with that, wishing you a May Day, a gate opening, a spring and summer filled with peace and plenty. I'll see you soon, everyone.